Today we celebrate the Feast of the Epiphany. And when thinking about the Feast of the Epiphany, what usually comes to mind first is the idea of the Magi arriving and seeing Jesus, right? And giving those gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And that's not wrong. That's what we hear about in the gospel today, right? But the idea of the Magi arriving isn't per se the idea that the Feast of the Epiphany is getting at. It's about the arrival of our Lord and his manifestation to the broader world, right? He had revealed himself to the shepherds, but in revealing himself to the Magi, this was his first sort of stepping on the scene to the broader world, this epiphany, this arrival, this moment of revelation. When we say that we have an epiphany, it's this moment of insight, right? This a moment of revelation where one might call a moment that they realized they needed to turn their life around an epiphany, right? I had an epiphany yesterday as I laid on the snow of Welch ski area looking up at the sky thinking I probably should have gone down a few more blue hills before I went down this black one. So, how does this relate to the Magi and Jesus, right? The Greek word epiphania means manifestation or appearance, right? And in classical Greek literature, it would be used to signify maybe the appearance of an enemy at war, or the dawning of the sun in the morning, or the manifestation of one of the Greek gods to man, right? And so, on this Feast of Epiphany, we're not celebrating per se the arrival of the Magi, but this appearance and manifestation of God to the outside world. While the shepherds representing the Jewish people had already seen Jesus, the Magi represented the Gentiles, and this revelation of Jesus to them was this revelation of Jesus coming to save all peoples of the world, not just the Jewish people, but Gentiles as well. Jesus is this dawn from on high that is broken upon us, this light of glory of the Lord that we hear about in this first reading from the prophet Isaiah. Rise up in splendor, Jerusalem. Your light has come. The glory of the Lord shines upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick clouds cover the peoples. But upon you the Lord shines, and over you appears his glory. In the midst of darkness, the glory of the Lord manifests itself and shines forth. In the first book of Kings, the prophet Elijah experiences a number of dark days. He's constantly denouncing Queen Jezebel, the Phoenician wife of Israel's king Ahab, for her idol worship. And she's determined to kill Elijah for that denunciation that he keeps doing, right? And Elijah flees into the wilderness, and he asks God to die. He asks God to die. But amidst that, God has an epiphany planned for Elijah, and not exactly how Elijah might have imagined. A storm arises, and Elijah hides in a cave. And Elijah listens for the voice of God in the storm, but he hears nothing. Then an earthquake comes, and Elijah listens for the voice of God in that earthquake, and again he hears nothing. Next, a fire engulfs the mountainside and sends sparks soaring towards the sky, but God isn't in the fire either. Finally, the storm settles, and there's a calm, and it's in that silence, it's in that quiet, that a small, still voice comes to Elijah. And he knows that this, at last, is the voice of the Lord. He knows that this is this epiphany, this revelation of the Lord that he's been waiting for. And this is how God reveals himself to Elijah in that moment. We can look back through the past year and recognize perhaps ways that God has revealed himself to us. The past year, the past 2 years have been really difficult. But even in that, we might be able to notice those ways that in the midst of all this difficulty, our Lord has worked in us, even amidst pain and suffering, to cause growth within us, right? So it's important to look back and realize, where has our Lord revealed himself to us in the past year, in 2021? And how have we grown in love of him through those experiences? How has our Lord revealed himself to you in the past year? How do we plan on giving gifts to the Lord, as the Magi did, in return to the great gifts that he has given for us? How are we going to pay attention to when he reveals himself to us, even in the little things, in the moments of silence, as we start this new year, 2022? In John Pierre Cassade's book, Abandonment to Divine Providence, he writes, "The awareness that God is present and active in everything that happens, at every moment, is the deepest knowledge we can have in this life of the things of God." God isn't just this vague concept that's out there somewhere, right? God didn't just create the universe and set it off on its merry little way and say, "See you later." God reveals himself to us in each and every moment of our life, just as he revealed himself to the shepherds, just as he revealed himself to the Magi. If only we listen in that silence. We want to discover him and see his epiphany that he has planned for us. We need to pay attention. Do we take time in our day to stop and reflect on what God is doing in our lives? It doesn't need to be long, 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes, just in silence and prayer, where I'm not doing anything except being present to God. Phone is off and in another room. Notifications are muted. Mind is clear. As we take time to slow down, we can become more aware that God is present and active in everything in our life, every moment. We start to recognize Christ's continuing epiphany in the events of our lives. We start to recognize Christ manifesting himself to us in those around us and in our relationships with them. Here in the Mass, we're slowing down and we're allowing Christ to speak to us at the end of this week and at the beginning of this year. Let's listen to what he has to say. Let's ask Christ to give us this gift to see his hidden glory in the Eucharist, each moment of our lives, and to respond to this revelation of himself, this epiphany, like the wise men, by giving him what we have and what we are.